To restring an electric guitar, it is very, very similar to the acoustic, almost identical. The only differences that you may come across are the way that you feed the strings into the bridge and the saddles, and also the way that we wrap the strings around the tuning heads. This guitar, which I have, is a Stratocaster, and these are vintage tuners, and they're done in slightly a different way to the kind of classic tuners that we have on acoustic steel strings. So that is the only difference here, but I will explain how to do them. So the first thing, as always, is to take off the old strings. We don't really have to think too much about it. We're going to undo the strings just so they're kind of loose. Don't have to be too loose, just loose. And then we're going to cut them off, and we're going to be very careful when we cut them off because they are sharp. So these are very loose now. So again, I'll say it again, be careful with them, okay? Now, to take them out of the top first, I think probably makes sense, because in the vintage headstock tuners, they just lift out. And that's because when you feed them in, which I'll show you, you don't really, I mean, they're just fed in there from the top, and I'll show you in a few minutes. So I've taken those away, and I can get rid of these now. Those are for the bin. Now what we have to do is take the strings out of the bridge, which means what I'm going to have to do is just lift up the guitar and essentially just push the strings through the hole that you can see. You can kind of do all of them at once, really. Don't have to think too hard about this one. And then that's all done. So now here's our chance again to give our guitars a tiny bit of a wipe. Not soaking wet cloths, please. Microfiber, tiny bit damp. I mean, they're really bone dry, but they're tiny bit damp. So the strings that I'm going to use are Ernie balls, and these are medium gauge. These are 11s for me. So, I mean, these are the ones that I'm going to use for my guitar. I'll do another video on which guitar strings you should get as a beginner, but these ones are great. If I show you the packet, actually. These ones. And these are fantastic. Now, these strings, in fact, these are light gauge, sorry, not medium, these are 10s. These strings have their gauges in numbers. It starts at 46, which is the thickest, and it goes all the way to 10, which is the thinnest string. So it goes from highest to lowest on these particular set of strings. That's how they label them. Sometimes they're colors, but in these ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to poke the strings through, and I'll do one at a time on this one, I think. Unravel it very carefully. I'll start with the thickest E string. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up the guitar and poke it through the correct hole behind the bridge. And you can grab it and pull it all the way through. That's it, done. So let's go over to the business end again, and we'll use our trick that we used on the acoustic guitar. Pull the string tight around 2 holes this time. And what we have there is the perfect length now. So we're going to cut it off 2 strings above, sorry, two machine heads above. And I can just cut it at that marker. Now what we're going to do now, rather than wrap it round like we did with the acoustic guitar, what we do is put this part of the string vertically down. just like this. Now what I'm going to do now, it's right at the bottom. It can't go any further. I'm going to bend it down. I'm going to think about which way am I going to wrap this. It's going to wrap this way around. It's going to go on the inside here. Okay. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to bend it down towards the floor, just like that. And it's going to go right down like that. And I'm going to hold it there. So it's still as far as it will go in there. And what I'm going to do now is hold it very tightly there. I don't want it to come out at all. And then wrap it up. You can see that it's keeping it nice and tight. And in fact, what I am going to do, exactly like we did on the acoustic, is pull it really nice and tight, like this. I'm going to make sure that it goes underneath the wrap. And that's it for now. We don't need to go any tighter than that at this time. It's only just nice and lightly. So I'm going to do the same again. And you will notice that on this electric guitar, they are different, but on the Stratocaster, all of them are on the same side. So it's quite simple. You can just do it the same every time. In fact, every time. So I'll give it a go. Now here, because I'm trying to do the B string and I don't have another one to kind of measure from, I'm going to guess, and I'm going to do it roughly about there. I'm going to imagine that I've got one there, and that should be plenty. So you just bend it with your finger and then you can cut it. Now again, with this one, there's you've got to guess. You've just got to guess. It needs less than before. Less than before. So imagine this is the one you're trying to do. That's it there. Let's go slightly further about there. I'll tell you what, you don't want to cut off too much on this one. Go for more. Do more on the E string, I think. It's better to have more wraps on these vintage tuners than the standard ones. And make sure it's right in there with this one. It's really important. It's right in there. And you hold it in there, and then you can wrap it round. And sometimes what people like to do is do a first wrap. To be honest, I don't usually. It's normally okay. What have you got to do? Let's just hold it there very gently. See, it's just slipped out. Try again. Let's try this one. I'm holding it. I'm wrapping it. Cool. And that is tuned. Now, we have to give it a kind of a rough tune before we do the proper tuning. So I will do that quickly. What you need to do first is do stretching out the strings. If you put your first finger onto the first fret of the E string, the thickest string, and pull at the 12th fret, and do this for every string. This is really going to help the strings, sorry, for every fret, and do it for every string. This is really going to help the strings when you're tuning them to stay in tune. You can see I'm just pulling them and just stretching them. And I'm going to do it for all of the strings now. Cool. So that is roughly tuned, and we can properly tune it, but that is the process for replacing the strings on an electric guitar. And in this case, it's a Stratocaster. It's normally going to follow the same kind of thing. These are vintage tuners, but again, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think the important bit is understanding to get the right distance of the string to wrap around. I hope that was really helpful for you.